Hello, thank you for joining us at this session at the Future of Film Summit. This session is entitled Insights from the Future of Film Incubator. We're going to tell you much more about that and meet some of the exciting creatives who've been working as part of that incubator. My name is Wendy Mitchell. I'm a journalist and a film festival consultant, and I'm really thrilled to be moderating today. This session is supported by Garden Studios, who is the studio partner for the incubator. And just to tell you briefly about the incubator, it's designed to empower storytellers and bring exceptional new projects to market. It's involved coaching, sessions with industry leaders, hands-on learning with new technology, and it's going to culminate now in these brilliant people pitching their projects to investors. So good luck. Some of the topics the incubator has been covering include distribution, audience building, NFTs, brand building, audience development, virtual production, previs, world building, Web3, real-time animation. I mean, the list goes on. My little brain explodes a little. Some of the mentors on the incubator include Future of Film's Alex Stoltz, Brian Newman, Diana Williams, Haz Dalal, Julie Labassiere, Thomas Hogue, Jeff Gomez. And now I'm delighted to be joined by three participants in the incubator. And I'll introduce them briefly, just so we can get right into the heart of the matter. We have Frederick van Strijdonk. He is a filmmaker from Belgium, living in London now. He's worked with tech brands, including Apple. He's made cinematic films with mobile phones. He has been collaborating recently with NFT and Web3 projects, such as Pleaser DAO and the official Ghostbusters NFT project. He's also worked in production on films and TV shows like Jason Bourne, Assassin's Creed, and Black Mirror. We also have Ben Mole here, who is a director and writer who has directed 4 feature films, including Code of Silence, starring Stephen Moyer. He also has many TV credits, and he has directed a 360 VR sci-fi film and award-winning shorts and commercials and promos. He started his career in Hollywood as a camera tech on studio films. And he grew up in the US, Greece, and London, and lives in London now. And not least, but I'm introducing last, we have Xenia Morgan Bennett. And she is an activist, scholar, and filmmaker. Her recent credits include the short documentary, Mama, Mama, I'm Through. She's a New Yorker living in London on a Marshall Scholarship, very impressive. And she also has been working in the incubator, I think, with 2 other creatives who she'll tell us about. And she's an Afrofuturist working in moving image, visual art, and interactive video. And gosh, impressive people. So I wanted to just go around this Zoom room and hear a little bit about how you heard about the incubator and why you thought it was going to be a good fit for the work you want to do, and yeah, just why it was something you wanted to be a part of creatively. So Xenia, can I come to you first? And yeah, why was this incubator a good fit for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that when you're starting out as an emerging director, which is my case, I'm always looking for programs and for development opportunities that can both take an idea that I've come up with, but then also kind of nestle it close and provide a really rigorous structure in order to allow my project to do the growth that perhaps I myself don't always see the full picture of, just as a director at the beginning of my career. And so I had come up with this kind of vague, fun, sexy idea about a project around Afrofuturism and music and dance, which are topics that I love, and saw there's just through a listserv the advertisement for a future of film, and I was like, okay, cool, this looks cool. I like future, I like film. I'm gonna give it a chance. And then a couple of friends and I who had started out working on this project together applied for it, and then we were really thrilled to get the opportunity to join phase 1. And I think that as I started this program, I always felt like, oh, this is really fun. I'm just here for the ride, but I'm not gonna get to phase 2. I'm not gonna probably be one of the selected projects, but then it just kept on extending and extending. And I was really thrilled that Alex took a chance on my projects, especially being such a young director. And I think that that really emphasizes the future aspect of this program, which is that future of film, both being the technological side and pushing the platforms that we're telling these films, but also the voices that are telling these films as well. And I'm really happy and lucky to have been a part of this program. I feel very blessed.
Great. And I should say, we're going to hear much more about each of your projects, because I think that's a really great way to talk about the incubator in real terms. But before we do that, yeah, I'll just go around to Frederick. Can you tell us, for you, what, why was the incubator something that fit well with where you wanted to take your career and your projects?
Yeah, of course. So as you said earlier, I worked a lot and still do to a certain extent in making films shot with phones.
Mm.
And so I work a lot with phone brands, and I was always interested in the future of film and people who push film forward through technology or even through storytelling in different ways. And years ago, I discovered a podcast called The Future of Film, ran by Alex Stoltz. And so I became an avid listener of that podcast. And one day, I think at the end of the podcast, he announced that he was doing this. And I had this project, which we'll talk about in a bit, that I thought would be a good fit. And like Xenia, I applied not really expecting much. So I got in, and I'm still here. But it was very exciting to be amongst people who are thinking forward and innovating and pushing things and trying and failing and succeeding at the same time. And that's so exciting. Especially because I think sometimes us in the film world, we can be a little bit traditional. And so that was very fun. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And Ben, yeah, you've worked in the traditional film format, but obviously you've been exploring other opportunities as well. So yeah, Ben, tell us why this was an interesting fit for you in this incubator.
Yeah, I mean, Wendy, I guess that's exactly right. I have worked in the trad world. So when I heard about this, I was like, well, this is going to be for like cool, interactive, TikTok, FTV driven stuff. There's no way that they're going to be interested in the sort of stories that I was working on at the time. And I kind of didn't think about it. But I went away and I went for the proverbial walk around the block. And I thought, wait a second. I'm interested in this stuff as a consumer and where the future of film is going to be. But it suddenly occurred to me, my story is very much set in the world of future film and future gaming. And I'm personally really interested in it. So I felt I didn't have to have a kind of wacky 3-minute, 3-second film, blip films that were doing it. Maybe there was a way to tell what might be a traditional story, but using really future techniques and future ways of reaching audiences, future ways of making production happen, using ways and staying with that curve, something I've done already, racing 360 films that I've directed, and again, that was such a learning curve. I thought, my gosh, if I can learn so much more from people like Alex and the rest of the people on this and apply those. It's not even technique, I've got to say. It's a philosophy. It's a way of thinking about how we put stories into the world, whether that's how we do it technically, production-wise, or how we get the message out there. If we could do that with what might be considered more a traditional story structure, then we're moving with the times, and it's exciting. And also, in a way, I had the most to learn because I had to unlearn some old things and relearn it. So that was exciting. So I applied thinking there's no way I'm going to get it because it needs to be more tech innovative, let's call it. And I was really thrilled to be on it. And boy, what a journey it has. It's changed all my ideas about the future of film, not just about this project. So it's been, I just can't wait to get this project out into the world and tell people how we made it, because it's a real journey.
Well, I think that's a testament to the beauty of this incubator, is that it can be for sort of very inventive new platforms and new technologies. It can be about taking traditional storytelling and using new technology. I think that's wonderful. Ben, why don't we stick with you? So you're working on a feature film called Save Point. Can you tell us a little bit about Save Point? Yeah, just to start with, what is it?
So the basic story of Save Point is pretty straightforward. A young woman on Earth uses a gamer uses a future, set about 40 years in the future, I should say that. She uses a new game UI that she usually used to play games to pilot a drone on a distant planet. And she's got a mission up there to save her dad, who's being chased by baddie drones. It's pretty much that simple. It's a rescue mission. She never leaves Earth and he never leaves the planet. They connect through this tech, and she uses her game skills with this new immersive UI to fly these drones and save the day up there. So it's a fun action adventure, but also you can probably tell, you can probably see from the idea of it, it's also about tech connection at a distance. How immersive tech means we really with somebody when we're with them? What are the risks and dangers of remote authenticity when you're connecting with somebody at a distance maybe you haven't met before or you've fallen out with, and that's allegorical for all our relationships in life generally, not just in future filmy movies and storytelling, so and experiences. So that's really what the story's about, and why it fits with this idea of what is the future of film and what's it going to look like. And then on top of that, the really fun thing is, as she's playing this game and this UI and she's up there on the planet, things start to go wrong and her apartment starts to become the planet that is around her. She becomes totally immersed in this world. And then I thought, and this was one of the reasons I applied to the incubator in the first place, was like, wait a second, if we can use some cool new virtual production techniques, we've seen The Mandalorian, we know what that is, right? We understand what these things are, but what if I could subvert and manipulate her environment around her in real time, so the actress is reacting to the changing environment around her, the audience is seeing it as if it's really happening to her in front of her, and that suddenly her world is disappearing and becoming the world on this planet. There's no better way to do that, and than using virtual production. So that was the kind of key point of my pitch to the incubator at the beginning, is basically we can't do this story effectively without modern techniques. And so it became this thrilling thing where not only is the story about what the future tech is going to be, but we're using the future tech to explore that story. And it all just became really meta. And I could tell you some other stuff as we go through this interview about how super meta it's got, using AIs as our production designing team and all that kind of stuff. So it's that's really how the story fits into the arena that we're talking about today.
With your project Save Point, how would you say specifically going through the incubator has changed the way you're approaching it or thinking about it or working with technology?
Oh, that's a great question. So first and foremost, I have to say that you can read about this stuff on the internet and you can get up to speed, but it's not the primary luckiest thing on the incubator is to actually talk to practitioners like Hasdu Lal, like to go to the Garden Studios, who, by the way, have been fantastic supporters of helping us test this, and go and play with the stuff, get your hands dirty, understand how the tech really works when you're up against a clock and a schedule and all that sort of thing. So I think that's been a vital part of it. And then in terms of inspiration, the people that we've met, it's not so much that they give you a bullet point list of, okay, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this, but hanging out, and I really mean hanging out, just spending time with the people on the mentors that we've had on the program, their way of thinking about how film can be developed, how audiences can be reached. They don't give you a checklist of what to do that afternoon, but they give you a new outlook on how to approach storytelling and audience finding. Oh, well, here's a specific example. Hasdulal, fantastic writer, producer, director, animator, the effects genius, you name it, Hazimation. And he was saying how using Unreal and similar to virtual production techniques, he was doing a lot of visual development on his latest project that then became the actual assets that he used in the movie, so that effectively he's almost kind of showing a work in progress before there is a work in progress. But at the same time, there is a work in progress because he's doing it. And as he said to me once, he said the other day, he's become a mentor to this project as well. Brilliant to have. He said, make it feel like the train is already leaving the station, like it's happening and you're doing it and you're using these techniques. And so that's a great example of attitudinal difference that I've really learned from doing this. And there are thousands, there are hundreds more examples like that. So I think, yeah, those are the two key things: practically getting your hands dirty with things, talking to AI designers, talking to virtual production technicians, and speaking to mentors and gurus about how, a general philosophy about where we should be going and how we can sort of, I guess, percolate that through your way of thinking.
Xenia, can you tell us more about your project, which is called Moon Mama? And I believe it's a multi-platform project. Tell us what platforms and what it is.
Absolutely, there's a lot to tell. So Moon Mama, also known as Moon Mama Wants You to Dance, is a digital storytelling brand, and it centers around a family of Afro deities from this very far off planet at the very corner of the multiverse, who have come down to Earth in a time of war in order to save humanity from a dystopian future. And that's a very large theme, but basically what I'm trying to get to is asking, how can this family of deities and how can this project of Moon Mama Wants You to Dance really, in an interactive way, ask and examine what are the contributions that Black cultural art forms have made to the world at large and to the history of surviving and thriving in challenging times. Because I, as a young person right now, feel like these are challenging times, thinking about conversations about the climate crisis, about growing war tensions, about racial injustice and discrimination and the rise of the far right. It's a really pretty freaking hard time to be a young person, right? And so Moon Mama is trying to be this almost this empowering and energetic character who you can encounter through social media, who you can encounter in phase 2 with an interactive, immersive experience where you can actually walk through a physical space and meet Moon Mama and be invited to dance with her. And then also knowing that once you've met Moon Mama through this physical space, you can then further encounter her in things like Spotify playlists, like TikTok videos, like ultimately an animated TV series. And I think that what I'm really just excited about Moon Mama as a character, but also as a storytelling movement, is that she is this avatar who has come to say, okay, today is hard, but let's focus on how we can find our way to tomorrow through radical joy, through pleasure activism, and really through seeing the power of community.
I can't wait to meet Moon Mama. I think I need some Moon Mama dancing in my life. It sounds like this kind of incubator could open up a lot of worlds with this. I mean, what have you been most interested to sort of think about in the incubator? Has it been sort of Web3? Is it story building, world building?
Yeah. I think that's a great question, because I think I have to be really honest about the fact that I started this project in a fairly two-dimensional way. I thought it was going to be just one experience, where almost an art installation experience, where you could have our audience encounter a space that would be looping amazing archival videos and surrounding you with a more like fine arts experience, basically, of what contributions can Black cultural art forms make. And then through the program of Future of Film, I think what's been really exciting is with talking to mentors like Houston Howard and Hasdullah, as Ben mentioned, you're really able to see that if you are able to take advantage of all of like these democratized and available and creator centered platforms like NFTs or Web3, you can allow a character like Moon Mama to be accessible to her audience way earlier than through a traditional film rollout plan, and also without having to wait for a green light from anyone, because I know that my friends and I are hungry for a character in a project like Moon Mama now, not in 3 years, which is perhaps what a
traditional model would have
exactly
meant, or even 8 years of development or something.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that I'm really excited to have Moon Mama especially be a metahuman, and be a metahuman that's been designed in Unreal engines, because that means that she's an asset as a character, and that asset can be made available, and that story world can be made available through a really diverse platform of storytelling frameworks.
Sounds absolutely amazing, and the perfect sort of future of film project. And Fred, can you tell us more about your project? I think I saw it was a short film series, but maybe that's a reductive way to talk about it now. So tell us more, please.
Thanks, Wendy. So my project, Right Click Story, began as I was looking into the whole NFT Web3 ecosphere that was booming about a year and a half ago. And I noticed that people were very attached to their NFTs that we call PFPs, profile pictures. They would use them online, on Twitter, on social media, and sometimes they would create characters around them. And some people created like fully incognito pseudo digital identities around what essentially is like was what actually was like a talking monkey or a talking cat or an alien. And I was very touched by this connection, and I began animating them as a storyteller. I began animating them and telling stories with these characters, and the reaction I got from that was so strong and passionate that I was inspired to tell stories, to tell more and more expansive stories with them. And as I did more and more and more testing, I really noticed how you could really create a new and unique way to interact with stories. So the people who are watching your stories could have an NFT they own within the stories. Imagine Hogwarts, everybody knows Harry Potter. Imagine you were a student at Hogwarts while you're watching your favorite series is Harry Potter, and guess what? When Harry Potter arrives in Hogwarts, you're a student in that school. And that was such a powerful way to interact and engage with new forms of storytelling. And so I wrote various stories, and when I pitched it to the incubator, it was a sort of a mini-series, 6-part mini-series that I wanted to tell, featuring these various characters. And as we developed the project through the incubator, what I noticed was there was real potential to expand it and make it a bigger thing, where anybody could cast their NFTs and allow people to vote for NFTs that would be featured in the show. You don't even have to only use characters. It can be music, it can be art on the wall, it can be so many different things. And what made me very excited about this project is the idea of allowing, it's what I sort of call a new way, representation 2.0 almost. You know how if a Disney or today might cast certain actors because they feel like they have to represent that culture, which is a great thing. But in this case, it's done through these cartoon characters that can represent anything. You know, you can have a cat falling in love with a horse. You can have an alien, who has struggling to pay rent in the city. And you can tell so many stories about today's world, and at the same time, the key element is the community that is consuming this media, these stories are represented in this show. And that I thought was a very strong aspect that I'm very excited to continue to develop, and hopefully release soon.
I mean, you've said a little bit about how you've been thinking about the project differently in the incubator. But were there specific sessions that really got you thinking differently, or mentors, or yeah, how is there anything specific you've sort of thought about now differently?
Definitely. I think there were a few sessions, especially those by Houston Howard or Kevin Goetz, that really were more centered around how about market research, knowing how big your IP should be, and knowing and those really started to make me think bigger and what the potential of this would be. Because as I said, as like Xenia, the project started off as just like, we're gonna tell one story and we're gonna use these characters, but by hearing these people talk about thinking big pictures, story worlds, market research, all that stuff, I really began to see that there was potential, that this had a bigger potential. And so I began to look at the whole project more holistically, instead of just like, we're writing something, we're shooting it, and we're releasing it. And that's been really fun, and I've learned so much about how to do that.
Yeah, I got a little sneak peek of some of the research you guys got from the US agency Screen Engine, and then also the Danish research agency Publicum. And I was floored. I mean, this is the kind of stuff people pay many, many, many thousands of pounds to get. And it was so detailed and so fascinating to me. So yeah, Xenia, how did you take in that research? Was it a lot to sort of digest? Were there surprises in there for you?
Absolutely. I think that Screen Engine and Publicum were actually two of my favorite parts of this program, just because, as you said, it's such an incredible resource to have. And especially when you're thinking about your project, all of our projects are in early development stages for the most part, right? And so being able to have Publicum say, okay, well, this is where, so Publicum for me took Moon Mama. They went and surveyed, I think, over like 1,000 social media spaces, and then about 7 to 15 young people ages 18 to 35 to do a qualitative research report on how they would respond to a project like Moon Mama. And I was floored. I was floored by how excited these young people were for a project like Moon Mama, how high their expectations were, which is a little nerve-wracking for me as I go forward. But then also like just how hungry they are for it. And then also I would say that it was really fascinating because we would do these experiences together. And so even though I was, paying particular attention to how respondents were responding to my project, I was also able to learn from Ben's participants' responses and Fred's participant responses. And I think those research moments were also a really fascinating way for me to see how our projects all are in conversation with one another. Because even though they are very different mediums of projects, there are really clear overlaps between all three of our projects. I mean, just for an example, Fred and I both are thinking about our projects as kind of through an IP framework, and saying, okay, it started here, but it can really expand outward. And I think that we also have like similar age demographics. And I think that was really just exciting and energizing to see that there is an audience for this, and also to be able to take that to producers now, and say like, hey, like, don't you guys want to hop on board? Like this is a great opportunity, y'all.
It's amazing to really to get this kind of research. I mean, I could spend hours just looking at it on each of your projects. For you, Ben, with looking at that research, did it make you open your eyes to anything that you hadn't realized about your own project?
Yeah, it was fascinating. There was, especially the Publicum one, which asked some thematic questions about the focus group participants of the story, and they really divided into two kinds of illuminating answer. One was where we just genuinely asked a question we didn't know. Could you ever trust somebody who's lied to you online, for example, and how that might work in your story? And we knew that was going to be a research question. We wanted to find out what people felt about those kind of ideas, and we didn't know. And obviously, as individuals, we have opinions, but we didn't know what people were going to say. So that was interesting in itself, but that was kind of like an opinion poll. What I found really interesting was questions we expected to know the answer to came back different. And that was really provoking, because when you start to get challenged about the ideas that you think are a given in the way your characters are interacting or the way the world's dynamics work, and people will say, well, hang on, I don't really agree with that, and this might be quite interesting. Then you have to either justify it or change it, or it provokes new ideas up in a third way that nobody's thought of, which is the best. And so that was really interesting and productive to come back to be challenged on assumptions that I thought were a given. So that was great about the Publican one. And of course, with the Screen Engine, it was great to hear that people liked it and would pay to go and see it. I mean, that's always good to put in front of an investor, right?
Yeah. So yeah, any investors watching, talk to them about this hard facts about how people want to watch these projects. And Frederick, for you, because some of this is quite new, some of the sort of thematics that you're working with, or it's very much a changing world of the NFTs and the PFDs, and how did the research guide you?
A lot to answer shortly, but no, I wasn't aware everything. A lot of my ideas were I've done tests, but a lot of them in the end were still theoretical. And as what I'm trying to do, I haven't seen it done the way the way I'm trying to do them. It was tremendously insightful to see how people would react and the concerns people had about such an interaction between the community and the stories that they're watching. And in particular, what I thought was interesting was how the people who would, let's say, lend the NFTs to be in our stories, they saw their NFTs as their actors and their agents, and so they would basically allow them us to use them, and they would say like, oh, but we would love to have some story impact, and we would love to discuss the character, and so it's interesting to see. It will be very fun to create systems that allow for all of this and to create that infrastructure. So yeah, Publicum and Screen Engine were crucial in that development.
And Xenia just mentioned something I wanted to ask about, which is, you've got these amazing mentors, but I think in a program like this, it's also so great to have the other participants, and not just the three of you, but people who are on the journey, at the start. Can you talk a little bit about that? Xenia, I can come back to you. What have you learned things from the other people? Has it been great to sort of bounce ideas off of each other?
I mean, 100%. I think I think I feel very lucky to be in the company of both Ben and Fred, as we've been, and also all the participants in phase 1 as well, which was a really rich experience as well. Coming to a room, virtual or in person, and being able to see 16 other projects that are trying to push the frontiers of what filmmaking can look like and what storytelling can really look like in these next couple of months and years and decades. Mm-hmm. And I think specifically, okay, for example, Ben is an incredibly experienced filmmaker, and the other day we were just chit-chatting, and he was like, you know what, I have this great strategy I have of like making a little website for all of the films that I have in development. And that was just like a tiny tidbit of advice that I've been like rolling in my head for the last couple of days, and being like, okay, actually, even though I have an official mentor with Houston Howard, like I also am finding mentorship and peer-to-peer mentorship with both Fred and Ben, and again with Fred teaching me what an NFT is. Like I was very insecure in my knowledge of that, and now NFTs have become a critical part of Moon Mama's launch, knowing that because Moon Mama is a character who is also going to be hosting live events, that means that we can create NFTs that act as tickets to access those events. And you know, you invest in a Moon Mama NFT, then that means that you can come to a Moon Mama event. I wouldn't have been able to imagine that if it weren't for being able to talk to someone like Fred, who is clearly going to be a leading expert in Web3 and NFT design. So.
Yeah.
Can I jump in there, Wendy, if you don't mind? There's a slight negative, it's a positive negative to this. So I come away from meeting my colleagues here on the incubator thinking, oh man, now how could I put Katie, which is the name of the little funny little drone that our hero flies, into Fred's project, and how can I make that work? And I'll lose a whole day wondering how to put my stuff into Fred's thing, and then realize, oh man, you got to get back to work. And then also with Xenia's Moon Mama project, like, wait a sec, what if Moon Mama was in this woman's life in the future, and that was part of it? And I can lose a day kind of trying to bring those projects together, not in a forceful way, but because the experience of playing with our fellow travelers on this show just provokes those ideas, and it's been fantastic and very fertile creatively.
Yeah, Ben, just to stick with you, you know, you mentioned at the start that maybe you felt like, oh, I'm sort of the trad guy, and these are going to be TikTok people on this program. Yeah, I mean, have you felt like it's been a good exchange of ideas back and forth, and you can tell people about how cameras work, you know, in the studio system, and you know, how is that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't presume to tell anyone how things work, but yeah. I you know, so I'm interested in all this stuff. I really do try and keep ahead of it and follow it. And when there's a new opportunity, like the sci-fi 360 sci-fi movie film I made a couple of years ago, when that was still a new tech, by the way. So I'm very much interested in it. It's not so much it's alien. I just didn't know how it fit with a structure, with a traditional narrative, and that's been one of them really rewarding for me personally, to find out how you can use modern technique, not just tech, to and philosophies to make projects with a more linear narrative, but also that you can it provokes new ideas in that thing. And also, Wendy, we got to stick with this because this is what it's going to be in 5 years. So let's get with the program, let's get on the train and enjoy the ride. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and Fred, just for the same sort of question for you, how do you think working with everybody else, even in phase one, has maybe opened up your project in new ways or influenced you?
It's interesting. I recall the first day we had in phase one, when we met everyone at this virtual production studio, Garden Studios. And I remember sort of thinking like, oh, I found my people. And it's because everybody was just so excited. Everybody had something exciting to present, everything. And that was invigorating and energizing. And I came home that night with so much energy, and one of the things I do is I record a lot of voice notes that I use to process ideas. And I still have a voice note from that day where I talk with such excitement. But then as we went along, and as we started having sessions, and as we started to get as we started to get to know each other better, it was so insightful to, you know, have people around you that know your project, you know their project, you're excited about their project, you're excited about your project, and you can have a dialogue. You know, they can, you know, I remember last time I saw Ben in person, he told me something that now incorporated in my pitch. Xenia's done this many times too. Look, and it's because they all know about my project, and they know they can see what I'm lacking, and they'll have an outsider's perspective on it. And that's, you know, the creation process can be a bit lonely sometimes. And it's great to have people around you that, hey, you trust, you know they're great, and they know what you're trying to achieve here, and they'll give you great advice. And that's honestly one of the greatest parts of this whole experience.
Yes, I have a feeling you're going to be in each other's lives for some years ahead. Just to start to wrap up, I sometimes ask this of anybody I'm talking to about film, but I think with you three, it's the perfect question is what's exciting you right now about the future of filmmaking, the future of storytelling? Yeah, what's personally sort of revved you up recently? Ben, can I ask you first?
I really think, and it really just play off what Fred and what we've all three of us and Dina we've been saying about us working together. It's not thinking of a project on its own as a lump of creativity that's out there, but how can I use elements of that tie into other projects and that fit into other things? Can the character from this movie become a character in Fred's the journey, that film, or I don't even want to call it a film. No, it is a film. It's a story. How can different characters start to show up in other things? How does that genuine sense of a creative metaverse start to happen around all of projects across things? And we see that happen within brand universes like Marvel, of course, and that's been around for since the comics of the 50s, but how we can start to be using these in new texts and in new and innovative ways. I think that's really good fun and exciting, and it's certainly where I daydream most when I should be working, is how this can happen and what is the fun potential we can have with this.
We need people daydreaming. My goodness. Don't we all need more time to daydream? Yeah, Frederick, what would you say is exciting you about this whole possibilities ahead?
It's a good question. I think there's a lot of things that excite me, but I think what excites me the most is, and I think we're starting to see this, is all these technologies are becoming very widely available to anyone. Anybody can, with some DIY work, create a virtual set in their house. It might not be the Mandalorian level of professionalism, but it'll still work. Anybody can use Unreal Engine. Anybody can use, VR. Anybody can use AR. Anybody can 3D scan objects. Anybody can make a film with their phone. And I am very interested to see new perspectives of people all over the world telling amazing stories that we wouldn't normally see if it's, completely gated by a big studio. And I really think that will push storytelling and film and the industry forward. And that's to me, that's the most exciting thing for sure.
And Xenia, I mean, your whole project is exciting and new and story worlds. And yeah, what's exciting you about the future of the stories you can tell?
I think for me, it really is about that proximity that is opening up between the audience and the creator. I think as Fred was just mentioning, the middlemen are their roles are changing in an exciting and refreshing way. And for me, as an emerging voice and an emerging director, that just opens up my world in terms of being able to get to my audience and being able to tell the stories that I want to tell for the reasons that I want to tell them in an easier and more like spicy way, for lack of a better word. But I also think that as we touched upon in this last question, I think it's also really about the future of film is about collaboration. It's about being a part of a community like the one that I am right now with Fred and Alex and Ben, and being able to bounce ideas off of one another and say, okay, this idea doesn't need to be told in a singular way, but it can really expand, and then it can really get out into the world that it needs to be, in a way that it needs to be. And I feel just really energized, and I think that the future of film is exciting, and it's bold, and it's refreshing, and I can't wait to be a part of it.
Yeah, great words. I wanted to wish you all well with your pitches. I hope a lot of smart investors have either meeting you or are going to meet you after watching this and hearing more. Really congrats on your participation in this incubator. What a great program. I've been fascinated to hear a little bit about it. I want to do it. I need to think of a story though. Maybe next year. But really, thank you to the Future of Film Summit for hosting us, and to Alex and Storm and everyone there for bringing us together. And it's Yes, please, everybody out there, learn more about this amazing incubator. Thanks again to Garden Studios for supporting today's session. And stay well, stay creative, and we can't wait to see these projects come to life. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.